Hello! In this video, I want to talk to the seekers. These are people who are really trying hard to figure out what's going on with them in their life. They feel like something's a little bit wrong, but they can't put their finger on it. And so they are seeking endlessly, consuming information, trying to figure out who else feels this way. What could be causing this? What can I do differently? How can I live a more balanced life? What are other people doing who enjoy their lives? And can I copy them, right? And if you are watching this, chances are you are a seeker. I know seekers very well and very intimately because I have been one. I was someone who had these tendencies for, I'd say, most of my adult life. I knew something was kind of not right, that I wasn't happy with my life, and it didn't feel like an external thing, right? It felt like, well, someone would look from the outside at my life and probably assume reasonably that I'm happy, that I'm doing well. And nothing was like terribly wrong. I didn't have any diagnosed anxiety or depression or anything like that. Nothing was really going wrong. It was just that I was like, something doesn't feel as good as I want it to. I don't feel whole. I don't feel vibrant. I don't feel vivacious and magnetic. And like, why is that, right? And so there were lots of moments where like most of the time I'm fine, but in this one situation, I really shut down. Or I get really scared when I don't really understand why, right? So those are kinds of things that us seekers get really curious about. And we're like, oh, like I want to change that, or I want to learn more about that, but I don't know where to start. And so what we do is we scour the internet, we talk to other people about, hey, do you experience this? Or I've experienced this, what's your take on it? And I used to get like really vulnerable with friends who I assume kind of felt like I was dumping on them, because I was really just like, hey, like I'm experiencing this thing and I'm trying to figure it out. Has this ever happened to you? And if it didn't, if they didn't have anything to add, then I would just kind of almost like discard that conversation and be like, okay, next person, next blog article, next YouTube video, right? Like it wasn't really a healthy way to connect. That's kind of a side point. But based on this description, you probably already know if you're a seeker or not. And so I kind of want to make this video as someone who used to be a seeker and had a lot of kind of breakthroughs and epiphanies along the way. And now I believe that seeking is not really all that helpful. And I'll tell you what I think is a better idea. So this is a big topic. So I am kind of wanting to start in a place that is going to make sense. But for me, I was, like I said, someone who was really curious about like what's going on. I was having some social anxiety, and in the experience I was having was that when I was alone, I was just fine, and I thought highly of myself, and I was able to kind of entertain myself and do stuff that was enjoyable. Like it was fine. But as soon as there were kind of other social dynamics going on, I felt all of a sudden like really bad about myself. And I was like, oh, I'm not, I'm not someone that people want to be friends with, right? That was like kind of a thought running in the back of my head. And there were all these thoughts running in the back of my head. And I didn't really know what they were. They kind of were what I've heard called automatic thoughts, right? So chances are, if you're watching this, you also have automatic thoughts, because almost everyone does. And an automatic thought is something that kind of instantly comes up when you're in a certain situation. And usually it's, I was gonna say negative, or like it hinders you in some way. It's not really welcome. And a lot of the times these thoughts are not even really like in English. It's not conscious, it's not front of mind, but it's kind of playing in the background. And that is an analogy that I like to use when we're talking about the subconscious, right? So those are the things that are kind of happening underneath the surface. Your brain is still perceiving that those things are true. These stories, these automatic thoughts, sometimes are also called the stories we tell ourselves. That was one of the first things that I learned in therapy was be careful of the stories that you're telling yourself, which again is the same as like, just be aware, be curious about what are those things that feel super true, but maybe they're not. And usually they're negative, right? So in my experiences, when I started getting more curious about these things, I learned about the idea of a trailhead. So a trailhead is when you have an experience that is kind of unwelcome, right? So for me, it was social anxiety. I was in a social situation, something would happen and I would just feel like not myself, not my best self, right? And I think a lot of us can resonate with that feeling of like, in certain situations, I feel like I'm not my best self. And the next step is to just understand that and acknowledge that and like let that be. And honestly, those experiences are super, super valuable because they are trailheads. Now, a trailhead, again, if you think about a literal trailhead, it's the beginning of a long path or journey, right? And so when you experience this feeling inside, these emotions are happening for a reason, right? Your brain is perceiving some danger or some shame or some anxiety, something like that, right? Your brain is perceiving something and you know logically nothing's really here, right? There's not actual danger, but my body is treating it like there is. And that means there's something to investigate. So you can take that trailhead and basically kind of follow it. And by follow it, it's continue to get curious about it. And what is this feeling saying to me? What does this feeling kind of imply is true, or that what does it think is going on here? So for example, after I understood that my social anxiety could be a trailhead, I would go into experiences when, say it's a Christmas party and I know the host, but I don't know the other 25 people there, right? And I became aware that, okay, I'm gonna shut down. I'm gonna have this experience of, ooh, this is icky. I don't belong here. This is not safe for me. Like, I know I'm gonna have that experience. So when I'm in that experience, I would go into this party intentionally being like, this is gonna happen. And when it does, get curious about what's going on inside your head, right? And when I did that, it started to get kind of like, there were certain insecurities that I had that were front and center. And I couldn't really access them most of the time. But in this experience, because I was having this experience, because I was following this trailhead, I was able to be like, oh, I'm feeling insecure about X. And it was like very specific what those things were. And I've done this, dozens of times now. So I'm not really talking about any one moment in particular, but this is something that can and will happen to you too if you decide to kind of go this direction and follow your trailheads, right? Get curious. This is kind of a theme that I have on this channel is when you know you should do something, but it's going to be uncomfortable or difficult, you should still do it anyway. Like the rewards are so worth it. I heard a quote one time that I really loved on this topic that was, fight the dragon, get the gold. And I just love that so much because it's like, if you don't fight the dragon, you're never gonna get the gold on the other side, right? And so it's unpleasant to go through, but it is worth it to fight that dragon. And so that's kind of like a violent analogy there, but I think it's fitting because a lot of these opportunities we have to go down these trailheads and to get curious about the kind of darker experiences that we're having, a lot of times can feel really violent and like dangerous and scary, similar to if you were fighting a dragon. So that's why that resonates with me. But once it's clear what that insecurity is, you can work with it, and you can question that that voice that's going on in your head who says you're not good enough, or you're unlovable, or something about you is broken, right? Those are kind of, a lot of the times, those are the kind of the core things. Like, we're all walking around feeling like those things are true about ourselves. And when we look at other people, we're like, oh, they're lovable. Nothing's wrong with them. You know, they're good enough. They don't need to do anything differently. They're good enough. But we don't feel that ourselves. And I don't know what it is and why that's the case, but my perception and my understanding is that most of us, like 99% of us, at least, you know, in the US, are feeling something like that. Forget the 99%. I don't know what percent, but let's say a large majority of people are feeling deeply insecure about one of these things. And my argument is that if you want to kind of get to the bottom of like why you're not feeling great, even though everything on the outside is really good, I would like to submit that there's a chance that it's one of these things kind of happening in your subconscious running amok. And it could be a different insecurity as well, right? You could have sometimes there's like a shallower layer, which would be like, I'm not beautiful enough. I'm not smart enough. I'm not athletic enough. I'm not talented enough. I don't make enough money. I'm not cool enough. I don't have enough social status, right? Those are kind of like a mid-level insecurity in my mind. And the deeper insecurity, because the deeper insecurity is, if this is true about me, then, like, why is that important? Why is it important that I'm not smart enough? Then I, won't get a good job. Okay, why? Or like, why would that be bad? Because then my parents would, not be proud of me. Okay, why would that be bad? Because then I would feel like I don't deserve to be loved by my parents, or something like that, right? Like, if you kind of ask yourself, like, why is this important? Why? And this is part of the trailhead thing, is like, why you have an insecurity, you've identified what it is. Why is that important to you? If that's true, why would that be bad? Next thing, if that's true, why would that be bad? If that's true, why would that be bad? And it's usually gonna get to some bedrock thing, which again is like, I'm fundamentally not enough. I'm not worthy. I'm unlovable, or something about me is broken. There's probably more things like that, but like, you'll know when you hit this bedrock thing, right? Because there's nowhere else to go with it. Why is it bad that a part of you is broken? Like, well, that's just bad. Like, I don't want to feel that way, right? First of all, and I just want to say, like, then you can kind of get to the point where you're like, these things aren't necessarily true, right? Then you can kind of start to understand what's the nature of feeling good enough. How can I feel good enough? Like, these are fundamental things. That, for me, is when it's helpful to be a seeker. Because once you feel this thing about yourself, you can then, after going internal, after chasing those internal trailheads, drilling down, following the path. I'm picturing like a rope, like I'm following the path down the rope. You hit that bedrock. Then what you need there is resources. So that is when it's a perfect time to be a researcher and information type person, where you then can talk to, I wouldn't recommend talking to friends or family really, because they probably don't have these tools, but you can go to a professional, right? A mental health professional, a therapist, maybe in some cases a life coach, but these are pretty deep things. I'd probably say therapist. And again, nothing's wrong with you, right? This is like a core human experience, especially like in the 21st century. So Nothing's wrong with you. Hopefully you don't have a lot of stigma around getting help from a therapist. I started seeing a therapist when I was 22 years old, and it was just for this. I was like, hey, if I had a broken knee, I would go see a physician. And if I have kind of something going on in my head that I can't figure out, I'm gonna go see a professional in this field, right? And there's no stigma around that. I'm so glad I grew up in an environment where there was no stigma around asking for help or feeling like something's wrong with you for needing or wanting to get that information from people and from certified professionals. But highly recommend. It's like the best thing I have ever done. I'm still in therapy now, years and years later, and it's the best investment I've ever made in my life. I also have went through a bunch of different therapists and found one that I really love. So there's a part of it too there where it might not immediately be the best fit. But once you know what your core insecurity is, it is so much easier to find resources to address that or to work with it, right? I don't think my story and like what my specific insecurities were are all that important because everyone's going to be different. However, I will say that the resource that helped me the most and that I think helped a lot of people is called parts work. And it is kind of similar to a branch of therapy, a modality of therapy called internal family systems. Now, I'm not the expert on this. I'm not certified. I'm not a therapist. I would recommend looking into that as a place to start. It sounds a little bit weird. It has nothing to do with your actual family. It has to do with treating yourself as a bunch of different parts of you and not just like I'm one Ethan, but it's like there's lots of different parts of Ethan and they kind of all want different things. Ultimately, they're all trying to keep me safe. They're all trying to protect me and make sure that I don't make a really bad decision because ultimately it's part of the kind of brain's evolved survival mechanism, right? And anyway, there's lots of good research on internal family systems. So I would recommend looking into that and doing it. You could kind of try doing it yourself. There's lots of exercises that you can do. And also, it might be helpful to work with a therapist who is good at that and like trained with that. So my point to kind of wrap up here for seekers is I've been in your shoes and I've been in a place where I was looking for answers externally. I was looking around. I was like tinkering, experimenting, right? Nothing wrong with that. But I was looking for someone else to just hand me the answer that I needed, to say the perfect thing, right? And I would honestly get mad and frustrated when they didn't. And it was like, I was asking that of my friends and of my family. Like, that's not their job, right? But I was not taking responsibility for addressing what was wrong in my world. And I was looking externally and, oh, maybe if I wake up at 5 a.m. like this billionaire does, then I'll feel happy. Or then I'll feel like enough. Or then I'll feel like I can finally rest and I'll be okay to just rest, right? I've been there. And ultimately, nothing really worked for me until I went internal, until I started understanding the idea that my emotional reactions to things are something that I can pay attention to and they are important. And once I was able to focus on how am I feeling right now, is it a feeling that I like or a feeling that I don't like? Then I could focus, okay, if it's something I don't like, I am going to get curious about that. I'm going to put myself in that situation again, and I'm going to listen to what my brain is telling me, that kind of scared voice. What are they scared of? What are they insecure about? And once I understood what that insecurity was, I then did a practice of asking, why would that be bad, right? If this insecurity was true about me, why would that be bad? And there would be an answer. An answer would just come up. I'm not thinking, it's just like I'm kind of listening to whatever my brain is telling me. And keep doing that. Why would that be bad? Okay, then why would that be bad? Okay, then why would that be bad? Eventually you're going to get to bedrock, right? And when you're at bedrock, that's when it's helpful to have resources to see when other people had this core insecurity, what resources did they use, what tools, what exercises did they use in order to kind of heal themselves. Basically, what's going to happen is you're going to know at the end of this, at the end of using the resources, you're going to know exactly what do I need to hear. What do I need to hear in order to be okay, in order to not believe this bedrock awful thing, right? And we can spend our whole lives not knowing what it is we need to hear, but desperately, desperately wanting someone to tell us that thing. A lot of the times that can kind of be like external validation. That can be a relationship partner. That could be a parent, right? When people say, I just want my parents to be proud of me, right? Like those are all kind of external ways to get the thing you need, which is a real feeling of I'm enough. There's nothing wrong with me. I am lovable. Like it's all gonna be okay. I love myself, right? Like those are the things that we need to hear. And you can give those things to yourself. You can tell those things to yourself. And it's not necessarily gonna be easy. Like I'm not saying that this is gonna happen in a day, but if you commit yourself to this process of listening to what, I'm not gonna re-say everything I just said, but if you really want to end up in a different place and you want to have a life that you enjoy, an internal world that you enjoy and that feels joyful to live in, this is the method that I personally used and that I personally believe anyone could use to get to that point. Where now my life is like, I walk around every day and I'm like, I just don't really feel insecure. And nothing changed. I didn't really make any changes and no one told me anything different. I was like, oh, I feel now that nothing's wrong with me, that I am lovable, right? And that's great. That has made me feel what I wanted to feel initially, which is more magnetic, more vibrant. I think I used the word vivacious, right? Like that energy of like let's go. This is the life I want. This is the feeling I want. So it worked for me. I don't see any reason why it wouldn't work for you. So to all those seekers out there, I encourage you to turn your attention inward, and then you can go back outward when it comes to resources and tools. When it comes to other people's opinions, I don't think those are helpful because everyone's different. So if someone says, oh, I started taking fish oil and then my life got way better and I had all this energy and I never felt bad again. Like that could be true. Maybe you could experiment with that as well. I have found that it's more helpful when someone presents kind of an entire framework and try that framework and just kind of see for yourself. But I guess, stay curious. You seekers are great. I am proud to be among you. I want to connect with you and talk with you because you're generally really interesting people outside of everything that you're trying to do to build a better life and a better, more enjoyable internal world. So keep it up. Nothing's wrong with you. And hopefully this framework is helpful. Thanks. Talk to you in the next one. Bye.